maybe I'll just start because I know we are tight on time, and then hopefully Lala will pop in when she can. Okay, so welcome everybody. It's great to have everyone here. My name is Makosinski. I am based in New York City. I'm an inventor and speaker and writer, jack of all trades, Renaissance woman, if I may say. And I'm so honored to be hosting this panel, which is about skills for young learners. So what we'll be discussing is what skills do young people need to thrive in a world of exponential change? So, and what kind of innovative educators or startups or programs are doing to help teach these kinds of skills? The world is changing so fast around us, especially this year. We've seen such a huge turnaround. And I think it's really important that just as the world changes, so does the way that we educate young people and future generations. So we have a great panel here today. I don't think I could do them justice in introducing them. So very quickly, if each of you guys want to go around and give a couple sentences about what you love to do, where you are in the world right now, and that would be great. So whoever would like to start, Houbeb, would you like?
Okay. Thank you for this great opportunity to talk about what we are doing. So maybe in few words, I will present what we are doing in Tunisia and across Africa continent, because we are a group or a network of education institutions across Africa, in Tunisia, of course, my country, but also in Morocco, in Nigeria, in South Africa. And we have 14 institutions across the continent. We are present in 10 countries. And what we are trying to do is to be innovative and about education. So we try to learn more about the new profile of students, because students of today are totally different from the ones who are used to go to a university few years ago. This is a new generation which is digital native, which is, how to say that, embedded with the mobile mindset, what I call mobile mindset, which is the lack of patience and perseverance to wait many years to get the knowledge or to get the degree, as we are used to, as previous generations are used to. So the new generations are hurry and would like to learn quickly, and they are looking for short, let me say, programs more than long ones. So we are trying to adapt our programs and to train our teachers and faculty about this new profile of students, to be able to communicate with them, to understand them, and to offer them the best quality possible of education, to let them ready for the job market or for the entrepreneurial experience.
Yeah. Very cool. Awesome. And let's move on. Hinerangi, would you like to go next? And just as long as we can keep this a little brief so we can get to all the questions that I have for you guys, that would be lovely.
Absolutely. Kia ora koutou. I'm coming to you from New Zealand. It's dawn is about to break probably in the next few minutes, so it's very still in this house. My background is in career development, but the most important thing is I'm a mother of 5 children. And my daughter started her company when she was 17 to help other young people connect. I started our company with my husband at 26. So hopefully by the time it's my great-grandchildren, they'll start theirs at 5. Who knows what life will look like. It's lovely to be with you today. Kia ora.
Wonderful. Thank you. Markus, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm the head of school at Logan. I'm here in Denver, Colorado, and our core curriculum are individual student units, so the students pick whatever they want, whether it's zombies or epidemiology, although there's a connection there. And really my passion right now is connecting this child center, really humane education to other communities in our area, both African immigrant population, and then not too far away, Lakota tribe in the Dakotas. So, and then
Very cool.
next year, Denmark. So
Denmark, wow, that's amazing. And we got Laila to join us. So would you like to just introduce yourself briefly, and then I'll hop into some questions.
Great, great to meet you all. I'm Laila, and I'm originally from Myanmar, but now relocated for personal safety. I'm a mother of a digital native and also an entrepreneur. Before I becoming an entrepreneur of a EdTech AR venture, I was a teacher, elementary school teacher for many years. Then I was a teacher's trainer, school founder, and also education policy consultant. So I wear many hats in education, finally as an entrepreneur. And the reason is because of my daughter. I came to study in the United States for my bachelor and master, and 10 years apart. And the last time, really inspired me to be in the head of intellectual community in Cambridge, and the flipped learning movement was starting. And I was quite inspired because back home in 2016, the digitalization, the digital transformation happening. So me and my husband started a company called 360ed, leveraging the existing technology, which is a smartphone in people's pocket, turning into a learning device. Now, in a very difficult time like this in Myanmar with the military and the coup, and the mobile phones are the only medium of learning. The schools and teachers, the traditional learnings are out of the picture. So we are proud and also humble to be able to democratize access to learning through these mobile learning phones. Very pleased to meet you all and happy to learn from you.
Totally, that is so cool. And I totally wish that when I was in high school, I had something where I could scan with my phone a textbook and I would actually see an animation pop up. And like, where do you see kind of using technologies like augmented reality to engage young learners going? What do you hope for the future? And what does your kind of curriculum look like currently?
We started as just individuals, packets of boxes like this, flashcards. Then we partner with the Ministry of Education for the digitization of the textbooks. So everything is in their hand, the textbooks and the smartphone, scanning. In Myanmar, we have about 60,000 schools and 12 million students in the KG to 12 sector. And science learning lab is a luxury that we cannot afford. So, but the science is very basic and step by step. Once you get the first concept, second concept, it's not difficult. So we make the learning pops and teaching the basics with the, in a 4D visual spatial learning, 3D, 4D atmospheres, because everything we see and we hear, we touch is 3D, but only when we comes to learning, it's kind of flat, so our brain transcribe from this left to right, the words into the text. But if we can manipulate it, it's best. If we can manipulate it, if we can touch it and feel it and learn it, it's best. So we try to make the learning pops with the tools that we have in their hands. So we digitize the textbooks, and they can scan the textbooks and do the science learning in the augmented reality functions. And the principle comes from the pre-middle time, when the learning is fun, when the children, the animals, they hunt, they learn to hunt by playing. They don't go by the books and they don't go by lecture. So we go back to this learning by playing, and in this self-directed, learning models with the gamified features, and we try to build the app with the learning designs, with the assessment. And that's how we started, and we stay growing. And now with the disruption all caused by the COVID and also by the politics, we are pivoting, but still trying to provide access to the learning in Myanmar and beyond.
Very cool. I recently got to try a little bit of augmented reality, and I can't even imagine what it's like for students to have that experience and to feel like learning is less like work, but more like play. And my own experience doing science fair projects outside of school on my own it was like playing. It was just having fun and experimenting and playing around. And that's where I learned the most. So I totally support that. My other question for you is that, obviously, like many developing economies don't have a lot of resources necessarily to train teachers. So what have you done, or what are you doing to provide educators with the resources they need to be able to teach tomorrow's skills?
And it's very important questions. Creating the tools and having it accessible is not enough. And, partner with the teachers and helping them become a smarter teachers and to be able to use is very important. So during the COVID time, teachers become the parents. Parents are the teachers because, they cannot, the traditional schools, schooling. In my worldview, in my part of the world, the schools are dangerous, and now with the COVID and with the coup, schools are dangerous, and teachers are also on the hiding, and they are on strike. So 12 million students, they don't have the learnings, for 2 years in a row. That's what's happening in Myanmar. So the training, the teachers becoming training the parents. So we do the video lessons or how to teach with these learning tools. The children, they got it. It's by playing. They don't have to be taught, but the parents, involvement in children's education is very important. So we also create the video lessons for the teachers, for the parents now, that how to help the children, not just giving the phones away, not just giving the tablet away, but how to help like 30 minutes a day to 1 hour a day with the video lessons. And we broadcast from the Facebook as well. And these are the helping the parents at home now, to the children, survival tools right now. Yeah.
Wow, I'm so glad you guys have done that, because I don't feel like a lot of schools even like realized like, oh, we need to tell the parents actually how to teach the kids, whether it's because of COVID or not. In general, I think that's so important. So I'm glad you guys are doing stuff like that. We're going to move on to another panelist, Hinerangi. If you would like to unmute yourself, that would be lovely. So we actually met years ago when you were doing kind of like this workshop at Stanford, and I have very fond memories of the event. So my first question for you is that, obviously there are many countries that are slowly waking up to this need for acknowledging the history and culture of their Indigenous and First Nations populations. I'm Canadian, so I've been witnessing all of that. So how are the learning needs of Native New Zealand Maori youth being addressed? And how is Indigenous knowledge infused into their development of 21st century skills and education?
Well, sad to say that I think our country is on the early stages of really embracing the possibility that Indigenous learning, one, is a little different, two, is value added, and three, is actually a cornerstone to how we can contribute to our globe. And especially in these uncertain times, not just COVID, but environmental crisis and climate change. So I think about our Australian families, our Indigenous Australian families with tens of thousands of years of knowledge of how to live, how to protect their environment and how to transmit their knowledge. I think that we've got many Indigenous nations that can teach us. In our country, we're very lucky that we have a treaty between our state and us as Indigenous people that is starting to be realised. And I think that gives us in the education system a different opportunity to integrate our thinking. Why is that important? Because our demographic in our country is going to be more and more Indigenous, more and more Pacific peoples. And I think 50% of the population in our compulsory education system now are Māori or Pacifica. So if it's not going to be included, then we potentially will not succeed. Colonization is a really interesting thing. However, I digress on that. It's a few hundred years of fixing to consider in this country. I'm a founder with a bunch of people who looked at our little town of 4,000 people and thought, gee, our best export is our young people. We've lost 50% of our population because we don't have work. We have a very low income in our town. And so we founded a digital organization that pays people to come and learn. So instead of being in a classroom, that you have a job. The first 3 months you learn skills, and the next 9 months of the 12-month contract, you're actually on those tools that you've learned to create value. And the value is actually for our community. Cut a long story short, Hla Hla, I want to hang out with you because I'd really, really love to be able to invite you into our virtual classroom in our team space. We have 35 people in jobs now in our town of 4,000. I'd say we'll be probably getting to 70 by the end of the year. We want to change the conversation. We also want to ensure that it's, because most of our people are Indigenous in our community, and people are turning around and asking us what's going on in Wairoa, which is known for gangs and things like that, which is actually not true. Now they are saying, wow, digital things are happening here in this very isolated community. I love the idea of smartphones because most of our families can't even afford computers. So what else is possible? Sorry, I don't know if I answered your question, Anne, but bloody hell, I just want to hear from the other guys because they just sound so interesting as well.
No, I mean, everyone on this panel is fascinating with what they're doing. What kind of skills are you teaching in the programs?
Well, interestingly enough, we're actually supporting our team, our staff, to know about themselves. So we're teaching, we have language people coming because for most Māori, our first language is English. And so actually learning our own language, learning our own narratives, so that the digital content that they're creating or the applications that they're making are actually not imbued in Disney. Because that's what we're fed when we're at home. We quite often miss the importance of what our parents know, what our grandparents know. And so we're actually teaching about ourselves, about our cultural narratives, about how we fish, about how we survive. And also, why is that interesting to other people? Because we don't think that we're actually interesting. We think we're quite normal. The word Māori means normal. So we sort of think everybody else might be interesting. We're just normal. And what if our normal is actually interesting to others? And now with COVID, people realize you don't have to live in big cities to engage in digital industry, and that our children could actually live in our small town. We have everything that we require if they should wish to stay, and if they want to fly physically to other spaces, that we have the digital opportunity to stay grounded and enable us to be authentically ourselves as wherever we are in the world, if we could leave, but we can't, so that's okay too.
Totally. Wow, that's amazing. And New Zealand has I think around 5 million people living on the island. So, it's like a relatively small island nation. However, it seems that, what the country is doing, what you guys are doing is kind of above your weight class, perhaps, in helping spark kind of this entrepreneurship and self-drive in young people. So what do you think other countries can learn from New Zealand and your work? And why do you think you guys have been able to develop such a focus?
If there was a contribution that we could make as a island nation, and we are small, is actually courage. And that might sound, a bit cheesy, but we don't have big populations to find every specialization, every kind of learning that is possible. 21st century is 20% over, and we're still probably grappling with some things that other countries have had forever. I remember going to Korea at maybe the year 2000, and looking at things like vending machines and other technologies and thinking, oh my gosh, you could get your education from a vending machine here. We don't have vending machines. So, well, we do, but they still produce food. So what else could we learn? I think we've got a lot of Indigenous knowledge around growing food. So basic things like, what can you do in your own home? What can you grow to build sustainability? Because digital and all of those skills are really important, but without food, without essential things, without fresh water, what else is possible? And Anne, when I think about, we met you when you were, I don't know,
like
still
18,
a teenager.
19?
Still a teenager, and you'd already created, inventions that enable people to be able to read at night and to be warm and all sorts of things. So it inspired me to take young people who met you and went, wow, she's amazing. She's so smart. And then we said, you're smart too. And they were like, oh my gosh. We went home and they said, oh, actually, we're really fortunate to live in this country where we are not persecuted anymore for learning. I think about you, Laila, and I think about your people. Just best wishes to your people. So yeah, New Zealand, we could share some courage. We could also share some skills from our ancestral knowledge that takes us into the future.
Totally. Thank you so much. That was such a wonderful answer and heartfelt reply. So thank you, Hinerangi. I think next we'll move on to Houbeb, if you would like to unmute yourself. I have a couple questions for you. So in the coming decades, the African continent will soon have one of the greatest population growths in the world. So how are your schools in Tunisia and South Africa and all over, how are they preparing students with the skills that they will need for such, huge dramatic growth and change?
Yeah, you are right. Africa is preparing for significant population growth, especially for young people. So by 2050, 35% of world population under 24 years will be Africans. And 50 years later, 47% of world population under 24 will be Africans. However, African countries should focus, I think, from my point of view, on improving the indicator we call the GER, the gross enrollment ratio. Because, for example, in tertiary, in Africa, we are at 14% GER versus 87% for North America, for example. So we are far from the standard. Wow. And from my point of view, African countries should focus on three main points. So they have to focus on producing, if I can say that, teachers who are prepared for the modern learner, the one I described earlier, so the digital native, the mobile mindset children. And they have also to prepare and design modern schools which are open to the world, adopting futuristic teaching methods and teaching career-centered skills. The third point African countries should focus on is, of course, strengthening the internet infrastructure to support online education, which will be probably the unique solution to train large number of kids at the same time. Because you know that the continent is very vast, very huge, and population is distributed over cities. So we need to reach kids and students where they are. We don't have the right transportation infrastructure that allow all people to go to the school. So we need to reach them at home, if I can say that. And COVID-19 so helped to show that this is possible. Using technology today, we can reach students and kids at home, and we can provide them a high quality education. And then
how, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. So, and these are these challenges. So producing teachers, designing modern schools, and improving internet infrastructure are the same challenges for all countries. Because in Tunisia, for example, we don't have this growth of demography. We are just growing by 1.2% per year. But we have the same challenges. So, for example, in our case in Tunisia and across the entire network, all our institutions in the different countries, in South Africa, in Morocco, in Nigeria, we started a new certificate, what we call the 21st Century Skills Certificate, which is fully online course that trains the learner on the 8 most demanded skills by employers and for future work. So the skills are the behavioral intelligence, the critical and creative thinking, the problem solving, communication, collaboration, digital literacy, data analysis, and entrepreneurships. So on 2020, the certificate was rolled out across all institutions of the network, whatever the student profile, because we have technical, vocational, and we have tertiary schools. Also we have, for North Africa, for example, the language is the French. For southern countries, it's the English. So the certificate is delivered in both languages, and this certificate blends the top soft and digital skills, what we call the softies, so the social, emotional, and technological skills. So starting this year, all Honoris our graduates will be certified in order to add a significant and a distinctive competitive advantage to them curriculum on the job market. So we are trying as Honoris to be a world-class African human capital provider. This is what we are trying to do. So we prepare them for the future of work.
And then what can we do, or what kind of help is needed to actually help the teachers be able to teach 21st century skills / for the future of work and for the future of these students? What kind of programs or things do we need to teach them?
So in our case, we are trying to train them on all these new teaching models. But also in South Africa, for example, our school there is called Mankosa, and we have our university, and we have a school of education there. Where we offer many degrees, undergrad and postgrad and certificates, which prepare students to be teachers for K-12. Or administrative or manager, so many positions in education sector. And within this school, so last year, for example, we launched a new concept called I Teach Lab. A kind of laboratory with different compartments. This I Teach Lab visualize learning beyond the 4 walls of the classroom, as it focuses on educational transformation from the traditional classroom environment. It conceptualizes the abilities for change through the use of 21st century skills. technology and the implementation and design and the design of modernized curricula that fosters nuances amongst students. So the I Teach Lab organizes that cognitive abilities on its own is insufficient for impact on education. However, together with cutting-edge technologies, the two are catalysts for innovation in education. So the advancement and usage of technology in the classroom is of benefit because it changed the role of a learner from passive interaction, the learner who will be the future teacher, passive interaction to active participation. So students are no more just recipients of education and knowledge. They have become seekers, makers, and through active imagination, distributors. They need to be placed in a position where they are able to define their own goals, have impact on design decisions, and even evaluate their progress. And this change has proven to have a positive impact on both the self-esteem of these future teachers and their motivation for the modern learner.
Of course, that makes total sense. And I totally support, active learning instead of passive. And I also feel like a lot of entertainment for younger kids right now is much more passive and just like looking at a screen. So it's so important to actually get them to engage and move things around and be active. So thank you so much, Houbeb. We are going to move on to Markus, who is the head of the Logan school that actually kind of uses passion-based learning, or maybe more student-driven learning. So Markus, if you'd like to unmute yourself, for sure, I'm sure that when like maybe traditional educators or parents hear about student-driven learning, they think they're hearing about anarchy in the classroom with no rigor perhaps around the learning experience. So can you explain to us a little about what or how passion-based learning actually works and what kind of results do you get both as the student and as the teacher?
Sure. Well, and I started my teaching career as a Latin teacher in a small private school. So I know the most sort of extreme version of not very creative. And I think that it's actually 180 when you think about the classroom. So disrupting the classroom is a survival technique that children use all over the world, right? If it's not really speaking to them, it doesn't make sense. They find a way to poke their friend or do something to bring some stimulation to that class. And so when you have students who have picked anything, whether it's global warming or zombies or skateboards, it really doesn't matter what they're studying. That passion that they bring and their big questions of why. We have days where we literally have to kick kids outside to get fresh air. Like you have to get away, walk away from your project. And I think there's a real myth of rigor. And for most of us growing up in schools, rigor was typically mindless repetition or over-involved research or things that weren't really actually humane. And it was great to listen to everyone before you talked to me. I was like, I learned so much and connecting a lot of thoughts. And I think about whether it's the technology that Laila is talking about or some of the skill building that other panels talked about. I was picturing through this conversation a train where maybe one car was technology and one car was skills and one car was something else. The engine is still identity. The engine is still identity. If you do not care about the child that you're teaching, they will not, they're not going to learn very well. They might learn something and maybe despite you instead of because of you. But the more I stay in education, the more I recognize that that identity is everything. And when we have curriculum that doesn't honor children and says, be yourself, but on your own time, that's not very helpful in having kids really sink into their to their life or to their language. If it's been taken from them, it's just, I think parents unfortunately have a very, at least here I can see United States, very structured and sort of limited view of what success looks like, and look at test scores, which any researcher worth their salt has already proved that they measure nothing of use in terms of future success. However, a human might want to measure that.
Very interesting. I read that you said that learning can be like jazz. So I would love to know where that concept came from for you. What does it mean? And, you know, how could someone who's listening kind of apply that concept to their young learners?
I guess I think of two things. One, just to continue, I guess, the thought on identity. I'm a musician, and most musicians want to have their own voice. You don't want to sound like someone else. You want to sound like you.
Yeah.
That's the whole point, is to develop your own vocabulary, develop your own understanding of the music, and then to share that. And then and I play mostly improvised music that's not written out. And I think that in schools and then maybe in life, we try to compose our lives. Here's how we're going to go through this. And I'm not saying that there aren't steps to learning into certain skills or certain content, but most of life was really learned when we transpose it, right? When we look back and try to write it down. So when I went to go fix my bike for the first time, sure, I had directions, but it's really only in retrospect that I understand what I did correctly, what I did incorrectly, and then what I'll do next time and make that portable. And so I think for you know, when I was a younger musician and you would go online or talk to people and try to get a transcription, right? You wanted to, how did that person do that solo? But the person who played the solo didn't write it down, they just played it. And so I think that there's a lot for me in jazz that, again, that identity piece, the flexibility piece, the ensemble piece, how do I work together in this family of musicians? How do you work together? I love the talk of parents in education, because parents are still the first and forever educators, no matter what. And so to involve parents in a meaningful way in a child's education, where you can create what a colleague of mine used to call a conspiracy of adults, right? Everyone breathing together for the welfare of this child, home, school, community. A big part of our program here is our students get to work with, we have 5 teachers whose sole job is to get the kids off campus to interview primary sources. So if you're studying car mechanics, you go down the street, you call the mechanic, and these are free resources, right? You call and say, hey, I have an 8-year-old who wants to study engines. Do you have some time? Sure, I have an hour after lunch, bring them down. And so you bring these, 2 or 3 kids down there, and the joy that happens for those kids to talk to an expert who can show them things that they've never gotten to see. But then the joy of that mechanic, I've seen it, I've been on these trips where they just light up and say, wow, this kid really has a lot of great questions and they're really interested. And I'm so glad that I could be a resource. And how many of us have heard, I would have been a teacher, but it doesn't pay enough, right? There's so many teachers out there who are waiting to educate our children, but they're going to need an invitation. And then, as many have said, they're also going to need a little bit of training and support just to understand what's at stake for so many kids. And again, going back to identity, it would be foolish to think in the same way that there's no one size fits all curriculum. There's no one size fits all to the challenges that anyone here representing different countries is facing. And I think there is a thread, though, of that identity piece. Having traveled sometime in North Africa, just understanding the different cultures, with a very small border, and so Morocco itself, if you go from Mohammed up to Fez, it's a very, not Fez, sorry. What's at the north? Anyway, at the top, it's a very different culture and country within a country. And so all of the different, I think it just helps to have that open mind and not to make assumptions. And I dropped into another session earlier, and this woman, Charmi, I think was her name, she said that the workplace isn't necessarily recognizing the capabilities of the workforce. They have this one measure. And I think schools are doing the same thing. We're measuring kids with tools that aren't really appropriate for understanding their capabilities and potential.
Totally. And I think especially high school and middle school is such a primary time for kids to find out, who am I? What do I like doing? What do I hate doing? And it was so funny because I was that kid that I loved doing science fair projects. I would do a project or 2 every year. But when it came to learning physics or chemistry in school with the rest of my classmates, I failed it. I was so bad at it because I just, wasn't really excited by the idea of doing textbook questions and doing those and then handing it in. I didn't find that stimulating at all as a learner. And I found when I went home after school and was playing around with electronics and being much more hands-on, that's when I learned the most. But I also was so self-conscious of kind of the stereotypes that come with being a kid that did science fair, when I was 15, that I feel like I didn't really embrace my identity until the whole world knew about it. And I was like, okay, I have to be okay with it now. So it's really awesome to hear that. And I think getting kids, no matter how old they are, as young as possible, talking to real people who are actually working in those fields and getting a sense of what is it like to be, you know, car mechanic, fireman, computer analyst, like whatever it is, that's so important. And I think, you know, also sometimes it felt, or at least when I was in high school, that like you have to get your high school diploma and then you have to get your undergraduate degree, then you have to get your graduate degree before you can really make like a difference or an impact in the world. But I think now a lot of students and younger people are realizing, or at least the educational system should encourage this, that like, hey, you can be any age and you can start making a project in class, whether it is passion driven, whatever that is, something that it could actually help someone in your community. And if it can help one person there, it could actually end up helping thousands of people around the world who encounter the same problem. So I think really driving students to realize that they can make a difference no matter what age, or if they're good at science or math or whatever, but whatever they're good at, they can bring that in, combine it maybe with the arts and sciences, and create something that could really impact people. So thank you, Markus. That was lovely. I have a couple questions. We got 10 minutes. So if anybody listening would like to send in a question through the Q&A, please do so. But I have a kind of open questions for all the panelists. So whoever wants to answer can go first. My first one is kind of, what have you guys learned? I mean, it's a very broad question, but what have you guys learned from the pandemic era of remote learning? What do you think will change going forward about the way we teach young learners, learning at home, self-education, things like that?
I actually learned that my children wanted to spend time with us. I learned that that the simple things are more important than the flash things. I learned that the silence of Mother Nature without cars on the road regenerated quite quickly. And I learned that my children require hope. That actually, if we could do that in the 3 months that we were in our home lockdown, that actually there may be a future for them in an environment that can sustain them, and leadership that may potentially care enough about future generations to not always think about the immediate dollar. We're very lucky to have a prime minister that's getting quite a hard time right now in our own country, being called misogynistic, crappy things, because she's trying to keep it all together. And I think that we have to stand up for leaders who believe in democratizing education. I love those words, Laila, and also stand up for the future. That's what I've learned.
As a mom myself, I also came to realize that it's not teaching the young children, it's learning with my daughter, 6 years old. She's already teaching me, you know, some digital skills that I was, oh wow, I didn't know we can do that, you know. So learning with is being humble of, you know, because they are the different age digital natives. So it's the information literacy, digital literacy. We can learn together with them, and also the importance of health and nutrition literacy. You know, it's life skills that we all learn during this pandemic time, and the time we spend together, you know, at home, either lockdown or because of the other political and safe situation. And then these three things that we learn with the youths are very important. This information literacy, whatever we see, we can trust, you know, the verifying and checks and all that. This digital literacy and health and nutrition literacy for our survivals.
If I can maybe provide you with important information, which are results of a survey we realized with 10,000 students across the continent about the impact of COVID on the way students are learning. Because the pandemic impacted not only the way we are teaching, but also the way students are discovering the universities or are choosing the university. Of course, the student experience. So what they are using inside the school or the university, and also the employability. So these are the three what we call the mouth of truth, MOT. We focused our survey on. So, for example, we asked students how you found about the institutions regarding the MOT1, which is student acquisition, and what is relating to student experience. So the adoption of online learning, how willing are students to use online content and take online sessions, examination, faculty interaction in general, and etc. How they avail of the administrative services online. So if they accept to take administrative services, which one they would like to take online, and also what will be the role of physical campus. How important is a physical campus in student overall experience? And the perception also of the online in general, how of the degree online, how employers see online learning, and what are merits of online learning from employers' point of view. And the third MOT, which is related to employability, so we asked like, are students willing to attend virtual career fairs, job fairs? Which career center services are students open to availing in online mode, etc. So they are also ready to go through virtual internships, because this is something we experienced also last year. So 10,000 responses have been collected across Honoris institutions, our institutions, and the sample is representative of enrollment mix, degree mix, working status, mode of delivery, and level of study. What we found, this is important, that there is a disparity between North Africa and South Africa. So, for example, 58% North African students are completely open to digitization of the enrollment process, versus 74% in South Africa. South Africa and Mauritius, and the 7 countries around South Africa. And for example, 44% are willing to take academic lessons online post-COVID in North Africa, versus 74% in South Africa. And 65% are willing to fully digitize all administrative services in North Africa, versus 81% in South Africa. And the top 5, if I can say that, campus interactions they selected, first is peer-to-peer interactions. So they are willing to go to campus for interacting with them, colleagues, so with other students, and to learn from other students more than from a faculty or from a teacher. The second is practical workshops. So they are looking for practicing in campus. All theoretical and lecture, they are okay to get it in online, but for practice, they have to go to the campus. And they are looking also for mentoring and tutoring in campus. And they are willing to be in co-working spaces. So they are perceiving the campus as a co-working space.
Very interesting. Houbeb, I'm so sorry. I have to cut you
Yeah,
off because
I
we need
have
to
more
wrap.
results of the survey. Are interested,
Everyone go email Houbeb, go find her on the internet and ask her for the rest of the study because this sounds amazing. And it's crazy the difference between what people want. So, you know, thank you everyone for listening and for also all of you guys for joining this amazing panel. I just feel so inspired for the future of education and for future generations of what we can look forward to, what we still have to fix and address. There's just such a great discussion today. Thank you to all the attendees as well who listened in. You can find all of these wonderful panelists online if you'd like to contact them or have a further discussion with them. So I believe we're going to wrap up now, but yeah, thank you guys so much. Wonderful conversation, all of you. It was truly just an honor just listening. So
Thanks,
yeah.
Anne.
Thank you
Thanks, Anne. Thank you all.
guys.
Thanks for moderating.
Yeah.
See you.
Yeah. See
Very
you
nice
soon.
to meet you again, Markus.